Well, if you guys end up discouraged after the message, you need to let me know. If you want to open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1, that's where we'll read our first passage from. I find that the creation is a good place to start when you need to start at the beginning. There's nothing really before that. So we're gonna look in the creation. Paul and Jesus both, they appealed back to the creation when they were talking about things like establishing husband-wife relationship, man-woman relationship. The Sabbath was the Sabbath because God rested on the seventh day, right, after creation. So there are a lot of things about the creation that are appealed to in the Old Testament and the New Testament to teach us principles and help us understand. And I want to look at one of those things today that I think we should at least think about as Christians today. So if you want to look in Genesis chapter 1, I'll read verses 26 to 28 to begin. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." What I want to spend a few minutes talking about this morning is subduing the earth. Appears to be a command, and it's not a command that Adam can carry out. One person can't subdue the earth. So I take this as a command for mankind. Rule over the earth, have dominion, subdue this creation. Now there's some other interesting things like, okay, if this is paradise, like what is there really to subdue? But I'm not going down that path. That's just like philosophical kind of stuff. Like what is there to subdue when you're living in perfection? I don't know. But they were supposed to subdue something. Well, we're living in like vast imperfection now. There's lots of stuff to subdue. So I don't think it applies to us in the sense of like, okay, at the end of my day, get out, my diary or whatever and say, in what ways did I subdue the earth today? And if I didn't find any ways to subdue the earth, then I'm not pleasing to God. That's not what I'm talking about. Right? I'm just talking about God says this is part of it. This is part of creation is kind of the way I read it. A result of God putting his image into part of his creation is that his image would subdue the rest of creation. Right? That's part of bearing the image of God, is ruling. Right? We even see that in the promises in Revelation. Jesus says, I'm not going to give you little thrones to sit on. You're going to sit with me on my throne. Just like my Father has given me this throne. So we're not kind of like little mini kings. We're sitting on the king's throne is the design, right? We see that in the future design. I think that's part of this here. It's not carrying out some kind of command. I've got to go out here and I've got to make sure all the weeds in my yard are dead, and that's subduing the earth. That might be part of it. But you're never going to win that battle, I'll tell you now. You'll never win that battle. But you can fight it every day if you want. The psalmist, rather than parroting this command, the psalmist kind of recognizes this as well. If you want to look in Psalm 8, this is a well-known psalm, Psalm 8. I'm just going to read verses 3 to 6 out of Psalm 8. "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels," or your translation may say a little lower than God. Either way, that's fine. "And you have crowned him with glory and honor. You've made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet." The psalmist is just looking around and recognizing a truth. Like, I can see. Man is crowned in this creation. There's no question. You don't even have to be spiritual. You just look around and say man dominates the creation. We don't go dominate the sun and like make the sun cold and that kind of stuff, but What we have within our reach, we own, right? We can't stop hurricanes, right? But we can build shelters, you see? So the psalmist isn't like parroting this thing. The psalmist is just kind of gathering evidence and saying, man, I look around and we rule the creation. And I believe what he's saying in the context here is that's a blessing from God. God designed it that way. God made things that way. Now, of course, the Hebrew writer goes on to say, hey, we don't see all things actually in submission to man, like death, right, disease. But the Hebrew writer says, but what we do see is we see Jesus, who has brought all things into submission to him, and therefore we have hope. So I'm not talking about like in any kind of absolute that we're supposed to perfectly implement heaven on earth or anything. I don't think that's what God is saying when he says subdue the earth. I think he just means bend it to your will, right? And of course, death is here because we sinned, not because it was part of earth, right? Death came from sin, right? So that's something we introduced. So we don't have dominion over that except through Christ, okay? So I just want to get the terms straight here, right? So we see in creation, we see in Psalms, and even in Hebrews chapter 2 that quotes the Psalm, that kind of reaffirms it. We see it all throughout the text. That really God intends mankind to rule over what he's done, what he's created. Well, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to suggest to you that you do that through technology. I know that's a 4-letter word with more than 4 letters, right? But I mean, just kind of sit and think about it for a while, right? Improvements to tools and methods, just to boil it down. You don't have to think of it as engineering, but I'm an engineer, so I like to think of it as engineering. Scientists might think of it as science. I'm not going to, if there are any scientists here, I'm not going to say I'm a scientist because that would diminish your status. Engineers don't do science. We make money. Scientists actually discover the real stuff. Engineers kind of steal what they discover and go make money with it. So we're lower on the status, the totem pole than that. But it's all about like finding a better way, right? I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard it. Build a better mousetrap, and the world will beat a path to your door. Well, that's not just like some crazy saying about mousetraps. Like that's real. If you do something better than anyone else in the world, the world is going to be standing at your door, wanting to adopt what you've figured out, because you've made it easier to subdue the creation. You've made it easier for other people to bend the will or bend the world to our will, right? That's all technology or science or engineering really is. Now I'm going to make a statement that's going to make some of you cringe, because it makes me cringe. I'm going to say this: every advance in technology is a step forward in subduing the earth. I don't like absolute statements like that. And so like when I wrote this down, I paused and I was like, all right, I'm going to go through, I'm going to find an exception to that rule. But there isn't one, because I phrased it correctly. Not every use of technology, you see, not every use of technology is an advance, right? It's not a step forward. But every advance in technology itself is, because the advance in the technology can be used for good, or it can be used for evil. You see? I mean, we've got examples all around us, right? You can get in your car and you can drive to church. Or you can get in your car and you can go run someone over. Cars do both things every day. Well, you don't go to church every day, I guess. Cars do both things every week. We'll put it that way. There are cars that drive to church every week. There are cars that run over people every week, every day. I mean intentionally. I don't mean on accident. Like, I mean, there are people who hit and run. I see it all the time, right? You hear it on the news, oh, we're looking for this car, hit and run. does that mean you're going to stop driving cars? Because somebody used a technological advancement in an evil way? Now we should stop driving cars. Of course not, right? It's crazy. So that's why I say every advance in technology is a step forward in just subduing the earth, which is not a moral thing. It's just what it is. It's just subduing the earth. So we studied David, the life of David, and this came up a few times. Advancing from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age isn't just a progression through time. You know why we didn't just pick like metals and say, oh, we're gonna divide history into metallic names. I mean, we could have used colors, right? Advancing from the Blue Age to the Yellow Age. Well, no, it was technology. The Bronze Age was the Bronze Age because there was an advancement in technology and metalworking, and bronze was the thing. And then when iron could pierce through bronze, people are like, oh, we got to change stuff. That really hurt. And it wasn't supposed to hurt. Right? I mean, it's usually warfare, right? But it wasn't just warfare. It was anything, right? And in fact, all of these things come from creation. We don't invent bronze. I mean, we might invent a mix of metals, right? I laugh, and I really do chuckle like every time I see something advertised as all natural. Anything. I don't care what it is. If it's advertised as all natural, I just laugh because I'm like, uranium is all natural. Like, do you know where uranium comes from? It comes from the ground. You dig it out of the ground. Do you know where oil comes from? You dig it out of the ground. Do you know where the heat comes from to divide crude into all its different types of fuels? It comes from the sun. I mean, everything in this building is all natural, I guarantee you. It did not come from outside nature. That would be supernatural. Right? Or extra natural. I don't know what the right term is. Super is above. Extra is outside, I guess. Right? So it's all natural. We're taking the elements God has left with us, and we're crafting them into something that's more useful than it was yesterday. You see? So we talked about this with the cars, but let's do David and Solomon, right? Should they have abandoned the use of iron because the Philistines used it in an ungodly way? Well, no. What about gold and silver? Way before the temple, gold and silver were used to make idols. Should they have said, oh, the process by which we refine gold has now been hijacked by these idol worshipers, and therefore we can't use it to refine gold for God's temple? Well, no, right? And in fact, if you go back to Exodus, God gave the plans for the tabernacle and for the ark himself. And it included gold. And it included silver. Well, you got to have some kind of technology to produce those things. More than hammer working, right? If you go dig up gold, it comes in like dust. And you might get a nugget or something, but it's going to have filth and all kinds of garbage in it. Right? So my point is technological advances in themselves are completely amoral. It's not a thing that makes you closer to God, and it's not a thing that makes you farther from God. It is a thing that can be used to subdue nature, right? It's not the only thing. So I mentioned earlier, like, how do you do this? Well, technology. Well, that's not the only thing. What if there's technology but there's no will? Like my weeds. I understand there's technology to kill weeds. I hear about it, And in fact, it could be really, really basic technology, like, putting some padding on my knees and getting down there and pulling them out with my fingers. Well, if I don't have the will to do anything about it, I'm not going to subdue anything. Right? You see, I'm not just saying technology is the only thing, right? There's got to be will in this subduing. But it's a tool. It's a way of accomplishing what God intended, apparently. Because, like I said, one man, Adam, is not going to subdue creation. He'll subdue his little plot of ground the best he can, but not all of creation. So, here's why I'm bringing this up. You guys might think, and my temptation in this was to like convert you all to engineers, like make you all as excited about physics as I am, or that is a legit, serious, honest temptation that I have, because like that's what all I want to talk about over like lunch or whatever. Robin, we spent 3 hours talking about that, but that's not why I'm bringing this up. And I'm not even trying to make anybody excited about technology or science or engineering. Here's what I think is happening today. I think Christians are hypocritically abandoning God's intent for us to rule over his creation because some ungodly people are advancing that rule and applying it in ways that are ungodly. That's a very long sentence. It's almost a Pauline sentence, so I'm going to read it again. Okay? I believe Christians are hypocritically abandoning God's intent for us to rule over his creation. Because there are some ungodly people out there who are advancing that rule over God's creation, but they're applying it in ways that are ungodly. Why do I say hypocritically abandoning it? Well, this is easy. We all drove here in cars. Or we got rides, right? In a vehicle. Or we rode on a train. Right? So that's why I say hypocritically abandoning. Because we are saturated with technological advances. I don't just mean in this century, right? I mean, if you don't live in a cave and never start a fire, well, then you're using some kind of technology, right? I mean, there's an appeal to me, and I mean, this is real. Like, as much as I like technology and science and engineering, there is a real, genuine appeal to me to, like, go live in the woods, no electricity, no gasoline-powered anything. Give me a hoe, give me some seeds, give me a lake where I can fish, where I can get some protein. I'm good. Like, that hits me every once in a while, and I'm just like, man, if one of you guys want to go do that, like, I'll come visit. But I can't pull the trigger on it myself, right? I can't do it. My iPhone, I get this separation anxiety. So my point is, if you go do that, you're going to be employing some technology because you're going to build yourself a shelter. Or you're going to live in a cave. Right? The cave may not be technology, but you're going to eat your fish raw. Is it going to be sushi every day? Do you see what I'm saying? Doesn't matter what you pick along the spectrum of technology, you're going to use technology. So that's why I say we're sort of hypocritically abandoning this drive, and we're saying, oh, these evil people are out here creating new ways to rule over the earth, and because they're using it in bad ways, I'm actually going to check out. All advances are bad, just because the way he used it was bad. I think Christians are doing that. Well, I don't think. Like, I know there are cases of Christians doing that. I don't know how widespread it is. But because of the cases I know, I'm concerned about that. As I said, not because I want you to be an engineer or be excited. I haven't gotten to exactly why yet, right? Tell me if you recognize these. Well, don't tell me. Nod, right? Nod if you recognize these proverbs. Proverbs 22:13. The lazy man says, "There is a lion outside. I shall be slain in the streets." Proverbs 26:13, the lazy man says, there is a lion in the road, a fierce lion in the streets. Why would a lazy man twice be characterized as someone freaking out about a lion? I mean, I would freak out about a lion. Everybody should freak out about a lion. What is this about? Well, he's too lazy to get off his couch and go do what needs to be done. And so he invents the lion. I mean, lions are real. Okay, okay. He invents the danger, I guess I should say. We don't invent lions. I can't go work the field today. I'm certain there's a lion in the street, and I'm going to get killed. Well, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible there's a lion in the street. But the lazy man doesn't know that, right? So here's where I'm bringing these things together. I think intellectually lazy Christians are falling into the same trap. I don't know anything about this technology, but I'm going to start throwing up red flags and freaking out about it. And I'm going to scare as many of my brethren as I can, so that they stay with me in my house on my couch and they don't go out and do anything intellectually useful. This is my concern. I don't need you to be excited about technology, science, engineering, anything. I need you to be honest and not intellectually lazy. Now, if you got attacked by a lion yesterday, right, and you got a little PTSD going on, and I come to you and I say, hey, why aren't you working? And you're like, there's a lion in the street. Right? Well, you're not lazy. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You were attacked by a lion. You see? That's not what Solomon is writing about in this text. That's not what I'm hearing and seeing from Christians around me. I can't be bothered to try to understand the technology. Not gonna spend any effort on that. I just don't like those people over there. So I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna fearmonger about the technology. That's unacceptable. Objectively unacceptable. Right? As Christians, going around saying things that could be total falsehoods. And even if it happened to be true, there's no credit because you don't know what you're saying is true. I cannot think of a clearer example of those proverbs today than the intellectual laziness I see in the church. So why is this a problem? Like, is this just like Richard is like, man, you guys don't like physics and I'm just chapped? No, that's not it, right? I hope you're starting to see what I'm talking about. Some people have told me and have implied that this is just a Romans 14 thing. Richard, you're freaking out about a Romans 14 thing. You need to chill out. You need to calm down. Let it go. Right? Okay, well let's read Romans 14. Because that is a legit question. That's legit. Romans 14, beginning in verse 1. Receive one who is weak in the faith, but not to dispute over doubtful things. For one believes he may eat all things, but he who is weak eats only vegetables. Let not him who eats despise him who does not eat. Let not him who does not eat judge him who does eat, for God has received him. Who are you to judge another servant? To his own master he stands or falls. Indeed, he will be made to stand, for God is able to make him stand. One person esteems one day over another. Another esteems every day alike. Let each be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it to the Lord, and he who does not observe the day to the Lord, he does not observe it. He who eats, eats to the Lord, for he gives God thanks. And he who does not eat to the Lord, he does not eat and gives God thanks. For none of us lives to himself. No one dies to himself. If we live to the Lord. And if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and rose and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living. But why do you judge your brother? Or why do you show contempt for your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, As I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, every tongue shall confess to God. So then each of us shall give account of himself to God. Therefore let us not judge one another anymore, but rather resolve this, not to put a stumbling block or a cause to fall in our brother's way. Right? Very powerful words, very applicable words today. I don't know what time they wouldn't be very, very applicable. But why do I say that what I'm referring to is not a Romans 14 thing? So best thing for me is to like give an example. I always talk in examples, and I talk with my hands. So here's a sense in which our attitude toward technology is a Romans 14 thing. Here's an example. Christian 1. I don't think Christians should drive a car because I believe it's an irresponsible abuse of God's creation. Christian 2. Why do you say that? Christian 1. Okay, get ready. Because I understand how natural areas are spoiled to get the raw material from the ground. I understand the release of chemicals into the atmosphere, ground, and water in the process of converting that into a usable form. I understand the release of particles, uncombusted fuel, partially combusted fuel, and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere isn't healthy for humans to breathe. That's a Romans 14 thing. That person is not intellectually lazy. Like, everything they stated there is true. And whether it really is a irresponsible use of God's creation is a total opinion, because God hasn't revealed that. You see how that's Romans 14. This person has taken what they know and have investigated, and what they know about God's word, they put them together and they said, I have a conviction, and I'm not going to bind it on you, but I think this is the way we should live. This is the way I'm going to live. That's Romans 14. Absolutely. Because Christian 2, which would be me, would be like, I won't pick you up in my car next time, right? Because that would be a stumbling block. You see? I'm going to keep driving because I don't share that view. But I'm not going to go to their house and pick them up and take them somewhere. They would be sinning against their conscience. That's Romans 14. I hope you guys can see how that's not what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give another example. Christian 1. I don't think Christians should drive a car because I believe it's an irresponsible use of God's creation. Word for word. Christian 2. Why do you say that? Christian 1. Because my chemistry teacher believes in evolution, and I know that chemists are involved in making fuel for cars. That's intellectual laziness. The chemist who produced that fuel probably does believe in evolution. That's true. How does that make driving cars an irresponsible abuse of God's creation? You didn't even put together an argument that made sense. You just cited an emotion, which is real. The emotion's real. Not diminishing emotions, okay, people? I'm really not. I'm not saying they're not worth anything. What I'm saying is they're not part of a logical conclusion. They're not part of an argument, right? The first example invites a reasonable discussion about why you should or shouldn't drive a car. By the way, I'm not interested in having that discussion. I drive my car. Like, I have no debate over that. If you're struggling with that in your head, I'll gladly sit down and just listen to your thoughts. But I'm not going to try to convince you to drive a car. Right? And this is an example, okay? The first one invites a reasonable discussion about technology and Scripture both. It does. The second one is just a sluggard on a bike going around yelling about lions in the street. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Let's conclude. How do I draw something useful out of all of this? Right? Like, how do we do something? How do I do something better tomorrow than today because of all of this that I've pulled out and put in the floor and put in the air here? I believe this is a spiritual issue. And I think it's dangerous. Because intellectually lazy Christians end up spreading falsehood. If I am intellectually lazy and I go around making assertions, the chance of me being right even for 24 hours are minuscule. If I'm just asserting about things because I just feel like making an assertion, I'm probably going to be wrong almost all the time. That kind of attitude, that kind of interaction with the world cannot define a Christian. What's going to happen when you start telling them about the gospel? And people have heard you make these assertions that demonstrate, I don't just mean to make suspicious, demonstrate intellectual laziness. And then you come up and say, hey, I've got some words of encouragement from Scripture that I think would be good for you. And they're going to be like, well, how do I know you even read it? You haven't demonstrated any kind of diligence in anything else. There is no lion in the street unless you see it. I know that sounds crazy, but I feel like that's got to be said. Like, do you guys understand that? There can be a lion in the street, but until you put your eyes on it, there ain't no lion in the street. Another reason I think this is dangerous can be seen in Isaiah chapter 5. Isaiah chapter 5, verses 20 and 21. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And in verse 21, we often leave out, woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. It's no coincidence those are together. Right? Now, I want to make a distinction about intellectual laziness and just lack of information. Right? If I have a lack of information, there's nothing wrong with that. That defines the human existence, is having a lack of information. It's not, doesn't like having all the information, that's not us. But intellectual laziness is when the information is there and you say, I'm not going to expend the effort to gather it. Okay? But if you're in the state where you have a lack of information and you fear that there might be a lion in the street and there's no way for you to go look, well, you need to take some precautions. You see what I'm saying? But you can't just stop acting. I feel like I'm walking this really fine line here. And I believe I am walking a very fine line. And I'm trying to make the distinction as crystal clear as possible. You don't need to understand everything about science and technology. That's not what I'm saying. And you don't need to spend your life being a scientist or an engineer or whatever. But you got to make some kind of effort to understand before you make assertions about things. And if you don't understand after all the effort you've made, or you've made no effort at all, you can't make any assertions. Not as a Christian. You cannot make assertions. You can give opinions. But you can't go around crying about a lion in the street. And you can't go around potentially calling good evil and evil good because you just want to make an assertion. The intellectual sluggard wandering around fear-mongering about technology will 99% of the time be calling good evil and will 100% of the time be wise in his own eyes because he's an intellectual sluggard. He can't be bothered to learn from others or improve his own understanding. Finally, this attitude is, in effect, a denial of reality. I'm going to use the shape of the earth as an example. It is surprisingly easy to determine that the earth is round and, in fact, to calculate its circumference to very high accuracy without ever leaving the surface of the planet. It's going to shock you guys. You just need a level from Home Depot. You know those 3-foot levels that have a little bubble? You need a level from Home Depot. And a straight stick, like a broomstick. You just take that level to Miami Beach on a certain day at a certain time. You measure the shadow that's cast by that stick using the level to make sure it's vertical. And you do the exact same thing or have someone on the other end of a cell phone, if you're not denying all technology, right? Have someone on the other end of a cell phone at the same time, on the same longitude, several hundred miles north, right? Canada, Michigan, where it doesn't matter. If the earth was flat, the difference in those shadows would be a known length. You can figure it out on a piece of paper. You can draw a flat surface with a point light here, the shadow cast in Miami, the shadow cast up north. They will be different lengths because they're in different places away from the sun. If the surface is curved, the northern shadow will be longer than it should be. Men did this before Christ was on the earth to figure out the circumference of the world. We're talking about technology that's thousands of years old, right? I mean, that's not like evidence, that's proof. I mean, we talk about proof. It can only really be done in mathematics. Well, that's geometry. Geometry is the only place, math's the only place you can do a proof, proper proof. Okay, so it's okay. Here's the example I use. It's okay to say, I'm too lazy to do the work. I don't want to do this Miami, Michigan, Canada stuff. So I don't know for sure. I just think the earth is flat. Like, you come to me with that, we're cool. It's fine. I am too lazy to do that work. I've never done this. I don't want to go do that. It's not okay to say this. I'm too lazy to do the work. I'm going to go tell everyone the earth is flat, and anyone who says the earth is round is wrong. I hope you guys understand the difference between those things. Like, I'm running into too many people who are Christians who don't understand the difference between those two things. We cannot be denying reality in front of people who need to hear the gospel from us. We can say we're suspicious of what people have told us. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can't just deny reality because you're too lazy to do the work. So here's the last point, and then we're done. The Christian's attitude toward knowledge, just knowledge in general, I believe should reflect what we see in Scripture. You guys, you can write these down if you want to, but I'm going to go through them probably too fast for you to turn. They're all from Proverbs. Chapter 1, verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So you start with the fear of God, and you're on your way to knowledge already, right? Proverbs 12:1, whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. Knowledge is distinct from wisdom and understanding. You guys understand that, right? Knowledge is just like the raw material. Understanding is taking the raw material and say, oh, the raw material makes sense to me. That's understanding. Wisdom is saying, I'm going to take my understanding and I'm going to wield it. I'm going to bend it. I'm going to use it, not just for my benefit, but the benefit of others and the advancement of God's will. That's wisdom. All of these are talking about knowledge. It's the raw material. It's information that's true. That's what knowledge is. Information that's true. Okay? Proverbs 13:16, every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool lays open his folly. Proverbs 15:2, the tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness. Proverbs 15:14, the heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness. Proverbs 18:15, the heart of the prudent acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. Proverbs 23:12, apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. Now, I'm not going to go into details of what he's saying there, but knowledge is just takes effort for you to go find out what's true. That's what knowledge is. All he's saying is the person of God will spend the effort to find out what's true before they make any kind of assertions. So what should we do? Okay, this is the whole point. We just need to check our attitudes. Just check your attitude. Right? And I'm using technology as an example, right? But I mean, I think this applies to every area of life, okay? Rather than being lazy, we need to cultivate some curiosity. Again, I'm not trying to make you all scientists and engineers, but just say, oh, I heard something that sounds really fishy. Maybe I should, see what's behind that statement rather than just who the author of the article is. You see? That's why I say cultivate curiosity. You don't have to go get a bachelor's of science degree. But without curiosity, you're not going to expend the effort, right? Nurture a hunger for knowledge about his works. I mean, do you guys think about that? Like when scientists or engineers or somebody describes something they've discovered about the world that you think, wow, they didn't invent something. They didn't come up with something new. All they did was discover something God put there in the first place when he said, let there be. That was all God's doing. We should learn to distinguish between the discovery of true things and humans' conclusions or applications of those truths. For example, electromagnetism. You don't have to agree with every message transmitted over the airwaves, right? But you shouldn't go to war against an objective truth for that reason. And when I say electromagnetism, I'm talking about radio waves, right? TV channels are transmitting through your body right now. You guys understand? There are 80 channels, over-the-air channels in Atlanta. They're all transmitting radio waves. They're hitting every single thing in the city. thousands of times a second. Well, I mean, you can say, I don't understand that or I don't believe that, but if you go around saying that's false, right, you're now denying reality. So just check your attitude. Have a hunger for this. Finally, we just need to learn to empty ourselves of pride and be real with ourselves and others about our fears and our apprehensions. Just stop trying to protect yourself from someone finding out you're ignorant about something or you're afraid of something or whatever. I'm ignorant of everything I've never read, right? I mean, that's a lot of stuff. Right? Stop trying to protect yourselves from that by appearing strong and making all these bold assertions that have no basis in reality. Just talk to your brother and say, man, I don't understand any of this stuff, and this is freaking me out. I'm scared of this. Then stuff in the church starts happening that actually should happen, right? You start getting support. So, people who have information will start sharing it. People who are just going to listen will start listening. Become comfortable saying this. I don't understand what that is or what it does, so I'm uncomfortable with that in my life. Just be cool with that. Because your brethren have to be cool with that too. Like we all need to learn that that's acceptable. So I hope this wasn't an axe grinding session. I did my best to try this not to be an axe grinding thing, because I really do love science and stuff. And I'm not trying to make you all excited about science, and I really am concerned about this attitude that I'm seeing all over of making assertions without any basis in reality or information or investigation or effort. Don't be that person. Instead, be comfortable saying what you feel or what you're worried about. Okay. I'm done. William has a song to close, and Kelly has the closing prayer. Okay. Thanks for your time, guys.